mchangizi here with your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about extended brains and how censorship or wrecking with your books and your libraries and even your social network can fundamentally alter your ability to think as a modern human 2.0 animal like we are. So let me back up and just ask, which one is better for your brain? Is it better to have a library with real physical books? Or is it better to have online access where you can just search and find your way to the information? Now, many of us will think, well, being online is better because you can just search and you instantly get there. But the problem with that is that that's not the way that humans navigate information. The way that we navigate information is the way that I'm doing it right now. We actually navigate by virtue of seeing cues and that spatial cues which lead us to some other spatial cues and so forth, and slowly we can find our way there. If you just beam there, if I wanted to find this particular place where I'm going now and I could just beam there, well, I'd have no idea really where it is. I could just beam there, and its relationship to all of the other things in my network would have no relationship because I'd just be beaming everywhere, and I'd have no structural relationship between all the items in my knowledge base. Now, my personal library at home is quite different than that. These are books that I've read multiple times. I know where they are on my personal bookshelf because I'm the one that placed them there. I know their colors and their arrangement. And once I find the book that's part of my brain, my extended brain, once I find that book, I can then open up the book, and inside the book there's also spatial navigation cues as well. There's different parts of the book have different kinds of figures that are in there, different kinds of pictorial diagrams, and I know where I am in the book by virtue of these sorts of diagrams and structures that you kind of remember when you learn the material the first time. So in that way, I know, and you know, lots and lots of things that go way beyond what's in your brain. My library, my personal library at home, really serves as an extension of my brain, and if you take it away, you've taken away all of the knowledge that I have, which isn't really in here at all. It's out there. So that's why it's important to understand the structure of these physical books, and it's something that online and even PDF is really unable, and especially HTML, because HTML, when you get to the page, it reformats every time, and so it doesn't have any relationship to where we saw last time. As you resize things in the fonts, or you have a different size screen and so forth, it loses all of its spatial navigation properties. Now, I found my way to where I'm going to go, and it was in fact to see if we could find this particular tree. And this tree, as you'll see, it's not there. We just have the stump, what was there. Now, I wanted to point out a nice metaphor. Now, I've found my way to the stump. It's a missing tree, and there's a sense at first glance that this tree trunk, this empty remains of what was part of this park, is gone. And so you might think of this as something like censorship, as we have in the internet. A voice is suddenly gone, and that voice is like a tree. But there are many respects in which it's much deeper when you lose a voice with censorship than just the loss of a tree. And I'm going to focus just on one today, and that's concerning a very similar point that I just made concerning navigation, spatial navigation, and how we have extended brains. The reason that we're as smart as we are with the human 2.0 selves is because of all these cultural artifacts and the way that books and the structures of technology around us harness us. And the way that Twitter does it, for example, and social media does it, you're not just searching online for information like you do for Google. The way that I've, for example, structured my Twitter posts over the course of the last year and a half since COVID hit and it became more of an issue to be active, is that my posts are organized into complex threads that interweave one another. They interweave your threads. They interweave millions of other people's threads that have incorporated mine. I've taken what could just be done as in a tweet by tweet manner, where you then just have lots of individual tweets with no structure. But instead, what I've done is I've turned Twitter into something that has spatial navigation. So now when I enter Twitter, I can find a particular post, and then from there I know that'll lead me down into that thread, part way down after the third post which has some particular image, I know that the one after that, for example, then will have a sublink to this particular paper by some particular other person on Twitter that I know, and that's how I know to get there. And it can be difficult and counterproductive just to search your way to it. By having these tendrils that interact all throughout Twitter, interacting with my own and interacting with everybody else's, I've created a kind of extended brain, and many of us who get good at Twitter have created our own extended brains that allow us to spatially navigate all of the knowledge that we've acquired over time. When you're censored by, in this case, Twitter, it's like somebody coming into your home and rearranging your library, or rearranging the pages on the books within your library, or altogether removing your library. There's many problems with censorship. I'm just pointing out one subtle one, that when you censor the individuals within it, not only do you censor their voice and you lose the tree that we saw, but that tree itself is interacting with loads and loads of other trees. It's more like a neuron in a brain. That individual neuron, a particular individual who's censored, not only do they lose their brain, their extended brain, in terms of how it was structured within Twitter, but all of the other people with whom those tendrils interacted lose part of their brain as well. They've lost access not only to the voices that was of the censored person that was interacting throughout, but their own spatial navigation that they created was part and parcel based on the landmarks of this other person and that person who have now disappeared. Those spatial landmarks are now gone. Many hundreds of thousands of brains get wrecked slightly every time someone is censored, by virtue of the loss of these sorts of spatial landmarks that happens by virtue of the evolutionary process of Twitter and other social networks growing. And that was your science moment.